And we are welcoming all of you tonight as participants in our program on plastic problems, solutions, and how to recycle right. This is presented by the Asheville Greenworks Plastic Reduction Task Force. But first, I want to acknowledge our concern about the injustices of systemic racism. Environmental issues cannot be separated from racial and social justice. I also want to acknowledge the virus, COVID-19, and the need for all of us to stay safe and well. We have changed our Sierra Club meetings to an online format to keep you safe and to keep us safe. So our Plastics Reduction Task Force is comprised of Allison Ormsby, lecturer in environmental studies and interim co-director of sustainability at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. Mickey Snowden is communication liaison at the Collider. Digman is AmeriCorps, waste reduction education coordinator at Greenworks. And Krista Stearns is the Plastic Reduction Task Force leader. I want to let everyone know that there's an excellent movie to give you background and to scare you intensely and hopefully lead you in the direction of solutions. It's called The Story of Plastics. And we have had this available on our Wenoca.org website for the last couple of weeks. It will continue to be available tonight after our program until 11:30 at night. Let me encourage you to avail yourself of this movie. Our next online program is always the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. It will be September the 3rd, and it will be William Barber III, Reverend Barber's son. He will be speaking on environmental injustice, race, class, and climate change. The advanced registration link can be found right this minute and ongoingly on our website, Western North Carolina Sierra Club, and it is wenoca.org. Please remember, how could you forget? Election Day is coming up November the 3rd. Please register to vote. Please do so and make sure that you check it. The deadline is October the 3rd. Very simple, www.ncvoter.org. We have this posted on our website. Please do confirm your registration. Make sure that your address is up to date, and look up that to check it at NC Voter Lookup. Early voting dates are the last 2 weeks of October, October 15th through the 31st. Please do request an absentee ballot. These are the days of COVID-19. Please go online, do so as soon as possible. Submit early. This again will be ncvoter.org. Fill it out online, print it out, sign it. If for yourself, you only need your signature. Return it, the signed request, to Buncombe County Election Services. You can mail it, fax it, or PDF email it. Go to wenoca.org for information. On the absentee ballot, they are going to begin to be mailed out on September the 4th. You only need one witness to sign on your ballot. Mail in your ballots. Those will have a barcode so that you can track that they received it and acknowledged. However, you can decide not to use this absentee ballot. If you go in person, they will have a tracking to see if they've already gotten your absentee ballot mailed in. If they don't, then they will allow you to vote. If they do have it, then they will not allow you to vote. You can also take your in-person absentee ballot to the Board of Education, Board of Election at 77 McDowell, and hand it in curbside if you don't want to have any exposure at all. We are requesting help with the election. We are looking for people to volunteer to download a phone app with Sierra Club information and then contact folks in your own contact list to pass on our endorsements and how to get absentee ballots and how to register. We're also asking for volunteers to help hand out our endorsement cards at in person, our early voting and our election day sites. If you would like to help with either one of these, please contact me. This is my email address, or you can go to our website, wenoca.org. Please also on our website see that there's a red button on the right. We once again have another pipeline that we are battling, and we have until this weekend, August 9th. Please make a comment by clicking through this button to the Department of Environmental Quality to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate extension of fracked gas coming into Western North Carolina. This is through this pathway would especially harm people of color, indigenous people, low-income communities in its pathway. And now our program, Plastic Problems, Solutions, and How to Recycle Right. We will be taking our questions at the end of the presentation. The presentation will roughly last until maybe 8 p.m. We will stay as long as you want to stay. Please do not write in the chat. Please do not raise your hand. Simply use the question and answer. And now let me introduce Allison and Mickey.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Judy, for inviting us. We're excited to be here. Just to reiterate, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can put questions in that at any time. Judy will be monitoring that, and if there's an easy answer, we'll type it in. And then for other questions, we'll save it for the conversation with our panelists at the end of our presentation. There are 4 of us presenting, well, really 3. And I'm going to be sharing my screen, so I'll go ahead and start that. And then we'll get started. Okay, so Mickey and I have the first section. I am at UNC Asheville, interim co-director of sustainability and lecturer in environmental studies, as Judy already said.
And I'm Mickey Snowden. I'm the communications liaison at the Collider. We are a nonprofit focused on climate change solutions through mitigation, adaptation, and building resilience through our member network. And Allison and I are going to cover history and challenges of plastic.
Great, and I want to thank everyone for taking time out tonight to hear about these important topics. And I want to especially thank friends and former and current students who may have shown up. So let's start off with a little chemistry. What is plastic? So plastic is, they're polymers made up of repeating monomers. You can see the chemical composition right here. They're sturdy, resilient, which is what made them so fabulous when they first started, which Mickey will tell us about. But the important thing we're focusing on tonight is that they're made from oil. So we have to remember that plastic is a product that relies on drilling for oil, and it lasts indefinitely. It's not biodegradable. So whatever plastic we produced, it's still around.
Thanks, Allison. So plastic, how did it get here? Most people think that plastic was first developed in the 1900s, but the first plastic was actually created in 1862 in England. It was created by a chemist named Alexander Parks, and it was essentially a celluloid. The first fully synthetic plastic was created in 1907, and it was created by Leo Baekeland and then aptly named Bakelite. It was created in the US, and it really kicked off the modern plastics industry in this country and in the world. World War II saw an increase in plastic production. Plastic was used in everything from planes to parachutes. And the plastics industry really started to take off in the early 1950s with the development of polyester. So plastic was being used in items like clothing, rope, and film, and polypropylene, which was used in packaging, automobiles, and medical devices. So post-World War II, there was an abundance of plastic left over, and it needed a market.
So a few stats about plastic. Less than 9% of plastics are recycled in the United States. So don't think, oh, it's fine, it's all getting recycled. No, it's not getting recycled. Nearly all of it is sent to landfills. And Mickey will break that down in our next slide. Plastics travel easily through ecosystems, as we've been seeing about the Great Garbage Patch, well, actually 5 plastic jars in the oceans. And nearly 100% of all plastics developed since the 50s remain on this plastic. So it's still here in our food webs. And a recent article came out called Peak Plastic, the Proliferation of Plastic. So if you want to read more, I recommend getting that article.
So this graph shows plastics waste management from 1960 to 2017. So between 1960 to 2017, 35,370,000 tons of plastic waste was generated in this country. Nearly 27 million tons of this plastic was landfilled. Nearly 6 million tons was recovered through combustion, also known as waste to energy, and nearly 3 million tons was recycled. So only 9% of all plastic waste generated over the last 60 years in the United States was actually recycled. And then note that tons of plastic shown on this graph in yellow, tons of plastic composted, doesn't even show up on the graph. Allison will cover composting bioplastics later in the presentation. And microplastics are plastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. They're about the size of a sesame seed. Microplastics have been getting a lot of attention in the news in the last 5 years, and for good reason. Microplastics generally stem from the production of plastics, which are tiny little pieces of plastic called nurdles. Nurdles are about the size of a lentil, and billions of these little plastic pieces are melted down to form bigger pieces of plastic. They can easily be molded once they're melted down. Microplastics are also produced from lint from synthetic clothing. Most synthetic clothing is plastic, polyester. And so over time, when these plastic clothes are washed, small pieces of plastic break down, they're degraded, and this plastic actually enters our wastewater streams through our laundry. And then lastly, microplastics form from the breakdown of larger pieces of plastic over time. So just simple degradation of plastic.
So microplastics bioaccumulate, which means that they're concentrated in higher levels of the food chain. So predators like sharks or larger predators like big cats, they eat lots of prey, and they're ingesting the plastic that's in the tissues of those prey animals, and then it's all accumulating in their fat tissues. Then another concept is biomagnification. That's at the individual level, not the food chain level. And that something called persistent organic pollutants, or POPs, they are sucked in by the microplastics, and they biomagnify in individual organisms. So this is why we try to avoid things like BPA in water bottles.
So what are the effects of microplastics on ecosystems? Marine plastic pollution can prevent algae and phytoplankton from receiving sunlight, which threatens entire food webs. Phytoplankton alone make up 40% of Earth's photosynthetic production. They use up CO2 and they produce oxygen just like any terrestrial plant. Phytoplankton are the base of the oceanic food web. A study that was conducted by the University of Florida found that microplastics on beaches actually retain more heat than sand particles, which affects the sex of sea turtle hatchlings. So what these researchers found is that temperatures between 24 to 29.5 degrees Celsius produce males, and temperatures from 29.5 to 34 degrees Celsius produce females. So essentially, these microplastics are mixed into sand, they're retaining more heat, and they are producing more female sea turtle hatchlings, specifically loggerhead sea turtles. And why does this matter? It's affecting sea turtle reproduction rates because there's more females. Microplastics can also damage organs and impact immune function and reproduction in marine life. So microplastics can actually block the digestive tracts of organisms, and they can tear and even rupture organs. And then, as Allison mentioned, They also, these microplastics get consumed by other animals and they work their way up the food chain. So for more information on microplastics, you can read my blog post called Plastic Wave, The Effect of Microplastics on Our Planet that I wrote for Asheville Greenworks earlier in the spring. And Finn is gonna cover how to recycle right now.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, thanks for the handoff, Mickey and Allison. I'm Finn Digman, the AmeriCorps Waste Reduction Education Coordinator with Asheville Greenworks, and I'm going to talk to you about how to recycle right. Next slide. First, a little bit about Asheville Greenworks. We were established in 1973 with the mission to inspire, equip, and mobilize individuals and communities to take care of the places we love to live. And one way to do that is to recycle right. Next slide. Let's start off with a little quote from Mr. Fred Rogers. Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. And this couldn't be more true for recycling. Next slide, please. Over the course of this presentation, I will define recycling so we all have a better understanding. I will talk about plastic symbols, the numbers that you see on plastic bottles and what they mean. And then we'll go really in depth in how to recycle right and the nuances of all of recycling. Next slide, please. So first, the dictionary definition of recycling is to pass again through a series of changes or treatments, to process something such as plastic, glass, or metal in order to regain material for human use. So when we're talking about recycling, we're talking about something that's already been used, it will be reprocessed, and then it will be used again. Pretty simple. Next slide, please. So why do we recycle? We recycle to reduce the waste sent to our landfills. If we fill up our landfills with plastic materials, first of all, we deal with toxins and leachates that can affect our groundwater supply, as well as decreasing the overall lifespan of landfills. And when we decrease the lifespan of landfills, it means we have to make more landfills and use more of our precious space and our precious land to devote simply to storing waste. We also recycle to conserve natural resources, and this comes in the form of not extracting oil like Allison was talking about earlier. We recycle to save energy, to support American manufacturing, and to create jobs. But why wouldn't we recycle? Well, that's kind of a complex question. And it has to do with all of the steps that come before recycling. So on the producer end, we need to think about, or rather producers need to think about, redesign. They need to redesign their packaging and their products to include less plastic overall, and so that the plastic that they do use is easily recyclable by municipal recycling providers. On our end, on the consumer's end, we can and should refuse plastic, and that means saying no to straws or plastic bags whenever you can. We need to reduce our plastic usage, and that means when you go to a grocery store, try opting for things that are packaged in either less plastic or no plastic at all. You should reuse your plastic materials. So I know when I get Chinese takeout and it comes in those little plastic microwavable trays, I tend to keep those for as long as I can so that I can use them for leftovers for months afterwards. We can repurpose our plastic in creative ways, whether that's functional or making fun arts and crafts around the house. And then, only then, once we've finished all of these steps, should we recycle. And then you should definitely recycle. Next slide, please. So recycling depends on the region that you're in. I'm going to be talking primarily about curbside recycling with Kirby. Kirby provides recycling services for Buncombe County, Asheville, and Fletcher. And they use a single stream recycling format. So that means everything that you can recycle with Kirby needs to be thrown in one bin. You should, if you live outside of the Buncombe County region, learn who your local recycling services provider is and visit their website for more information. And that should be pretty easy to find. You could sit at your window and watch the recycling truck pull up and look at the side of their truck, and they will probably have their name printed on the side. And then you can Google it and figure out how they recycle. And keep in mind, your provider may also be a city or municipality. Next slide, please. So, types of plastic. This is where many consumers get confused. There are 7 general types of plastic, but these 7 categories of plastic do not apply to you and me. We, as a consumer and as a recycler, don't actually need to know the type of plastic, and I'll talk more about why in just a little bit. What these 7 numbers are very broad categories for producers so that they know, say they have a number 1 plastic, they know that that is made of ethyl monomers and it's got terephtalates in it, and they know the characteristics and the recyclability of the plastic that they're working with. But for us, we don't actually need to know the types of plastic. Next slide, please. And so instead of numbers, we have to ask ourselves one single rule: did it come from a grocery store? That is the general rule that will save you so much hassle and so much confusion. Did it come from the grocery store? Is it a bottle, tub, jug, or jar? These are the shapes that are generally acceptable. If it is a bottle, tub, jug, or jar, and it came from the grocery store, you can recycle it with Kirby. That's regardless of number, whether it's 1, 2, 4, or 7. If it's a grocery store bought container, it's recyclable. However, you do need to remove the lids and strip out the films from your bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. And there's a couple reasons for this. Bottle caps are generally too small to be sorted, and they end up polluting the glass waste stream. Yogurt lids tend to come, even if you attach them in your bin, once they're dumped into the truck and they're compressed and they're processed, the yogurt lids or any type of lid like that will come away from the main body of the plastic container that you're trying to recycle, and those can fly away with the paper stream and pollute the paper stream that way. And then films clog up the machines, and they're generally made of very low grade, finely stretched plastics, so they are difficult to recycle no matter what. Next slide, please. And I really want to drive this home, guys. I'm sorry if I'm repetitive, but bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, they are the things that you can recycle with Kirby in Asheville. And this generally applies in the southeastern region. There are a couple of ways you need to treat your bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. They don't need to be squeaky clean, but you should scrape out the food. So you don't want a full jar of mayonnaise, you don't want a full tub of margarine, but don't waste water, especially don't waste hot water, just rinsing out juice cartons or stuff like that. You just need to make sure that there aren't big chunks of food in there, because that gets pretty gross and unsanitary for Kirby workers. Again, no lids, no films. They tend to be made of different types of plastic, and as we talked about earlier, they can contaminate other parts of the waste stream, of the recycling stream. And again, disregard that number. Kirby cares about shape, and in general, a single stream recycling service cares about shape more than number. Next slide, please. So, I know that I just said that you could recycle a tub. However, it has to be a tub from the grocery store. You do need to, after you've refused, reduced, and reused your takeout containers, you are going to need to either throw those in your bin, your trash can, or you will need to find some alternative recycling service, for example, TerraCycle, to take away your takeout containers. These cannot go in curbside recycling bins. You might know that microwavable black trays are not allowed in curbside recycling bins, but it's actually true for all parts of the takeout container, whether it's the lid, or it is a clear tub, or it is a white tub, or it is a black tub. All of those tend to be heat stabilized plastics, and it makes it much harder for recycling processors to deal with. You'll also see here on the far left a clamshell design. Whether there was a sandwich, a salad, or berries that you get from the grocery store in this type of clamshell container, none of those are recyclable in curbside recycling. Next slide, please. Also, disposable bottles, yes, you can recycle those. Reusable bottles like Nalgene's blender bottles, any other brand of bottle, no, you can't recycle those. However, I am still aggressively advocating that you use reusable bottles, even if you can't recycle them, because they're going to have a much longer lifespan than a disposable bottle and therefore require less energy and resources to carry with you and to use. But when it comes to recycling, never put your Nalgene in the recycling bin, only the disposable bottles like you see on the far right. Next slide, please. Another very important fact that you need to know for curbside recycling with Kirby is that you should never put plastic bags in your curbside recycling bin. That includes bagging up your plastic. Sometimes when you go to a grocery store, you'll see recycling trash bags. They'll be clear blue trash bags. Kirby doesn't want those, and they don't want single-use plastic bags or any type of plastic film. But there's good news. You can recycle these, just not in your bin. You can bring your plastic bags back to the grocery store that you got them from, or to a different one. Grocery stores like Publix, Harris Teeter, Ingles, and even non-grocery stores like Lowe's will accept single-use plastic bags and recycle them for you. Next slide, please. You've also got a lot of options when it comes to recycling. I know I laid out a pretty definite rule when it comes to curbside recycling, and that's bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. But you can recycle a lot of other items that won't fit in your curbside recycling bin by going private, right? So Publix and Harris Teeter, I already mentioned, will accept your single-use plastic bags, but Publix will also accept your clean food-grade styrofoam. You can go to FedEx or UPS and they will accept used packing peanuts. You can go to electronic stores like Best Buy and they might buy back or recycle your electronic goods. And then I could not more highly recommend going on to TerraCycle's website and Googling whatever you have. That's how I found out that you can recycle takeout containers and Tupperware containers. There's a TerraCycle program for that. You can also recycle Brita filters. There's a TerraCycle program for that. So if you're curious about a weird, hard to recycle item, you should look at TerraCycle. Then there's also hard to recycle events. Asheville Greenworks hosts 4 annual hard to recycle events every single year to help fill in the gaps of recycling. Now we're limited in what we can accept. We can accept block styrofoam, electronics, but if you're interested in learning more about hard to recycle events, you should follow Asheville Greenworks on Facebook and Instagram. Next slide, please. And now here's the final rule that I really want to drill into everybody's head. When in doubt, throw it out. And that's because a single misplaced item in a recycling stream can actually mess up the whole batch of recycling. It can make it so the recycling producer or the recycler has to throw away an entire truckload of glass or plastic because it's contaminated. And at the very least, incorrectly recycled plastic will degrade and contaminate the waste stream. So our motto is, when in doubt, throw it out. There are wishful recyclers, which are people like I originally was when I started this position, admittedly, where I just really wanted things to be recyclable. I saw the recycling symbol on the bottom of containers, and I thought that meant it was recyclable. However, I was contributing to contamination in the waste stream. So wishful recyclers are as problematic as all in one bin thinkers. We say when in doubt, throw it out because Kirby has to spend $10,000 a month on tipping fees at the landfill alone. And that doesn't even account for how much their processes are slowed down by unclogging machines clogged up with plastic bags. So it's better to be safe than sorry. When in doubt, throw it out. Next slide, please. And if you need any more information, visit Kirby.com or Google your local recycling services provider. You can email me at education@ashevillegreenworks.org, and you should definitely follow us on social media. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Allison Ormsby, and I think just Allison Ormsby for this one, actually.
That's right. Let's see. Can I get my video going? Might need help from the moderator. I think I'm going to continue though, whether you can see me or not. Can I get a confirmation? Okay, I'm going to carry on. All right, so we're going to talk about what to do, what the actions are. So I just want to make sure that you can hear me. Here we go. Okay, here we are. So what can you do? How are you going to solve some of this plastic problem? And I'm sorry that Krista could not be here. She's also part of the Plastic Reduction Task Force, but she couldn't make it today. So I'll talk about her ideas. Okay, so we're going to talk about individual level change, local change, and national change, and industry change. Let me just make sure that this is going okay. Okay, so at the industry level, I want to point out the litter bug myth. If you're older like me, you might recognize this advertisement. And if you watch the story of plastic, you also will hear about it. The Keep America Beautiful campaign was actually an industry strategy to put the blame of plastic pollution on the individual and to make us feel like it's our own behavior that is going to be the solution rather than the industry itself. And so we have to think about who is supporting the plastic industry, and it's oil. So we're going to talk about personal behavior. What can you do to minimize plastic in your life? So look around at what kind of plastic is in your house that you use every day. And we can think about some easy fixes like single-use plastic in silverware. Take out. So you could just buy an easy packet of bamboo silverware. It's available lots of places, including 10,000 Villages downtown Asheville, but lots of other places. So that would be one thing. So reusable silverware and a reusable water container like Finn showed. Those are easy ways to get rid of single-use plastic. Also, that cotton bag showing is a produce bag that you can wash and reuse when you get produce, wherever you do. Your toothbrush. You can totally avoid plastic toothbrushes, and you should say no to them and use a bamboo toothbrush instead. That is very easy to source. Beeswax wraps. So in the middle on the bowls, you can see that's beeswax. You can make your own, you can buy them. They're really easy to find, and you can use that instead of saran wrap or tinfoil. In the middle are soap nuts, and you can read more about soap nuts and using them for laundry detergent instead of laundry detergent on the Mind Your Plastic May blogs. And then bring your own to-go containers. This is post-COVID, something like this metal tiffin or any to-go containers, so you don't have to have more plastic. This is the part that Krista was going to share her recipes. She has a blog, and it's posted right now on Facebook's the Going Plastic Free Facebook page. So I encourage you to visit that and see her tips on making home supplies yourself rather than buying plastic containers of dishwashing liquid or laundry detergent or your dishwasher soap. So you can make your own soap cubes for your dishwasher, your own dishwashing liquid, and your own laundry detergent. And these are some of the really easy household products that you can use to make them yourself. She also had a blog on Mind Your Plastic May. So there are so many do-it-yourself solutions that you can do to avoid plastic packaging, including using bar shampoo rather than shampoo that comes in a plastic container. So a little history about the Plastic Reduction Task Force. It was started almost 2 years ago. And as Judy mentioned, Krista and I are members, and Finn, as an AmeriCorps person has helped out. So there's about 15 of us on the task force, and we encourage you to join us if you're interested. So one of our first initiatives was getting a voluntary plastic bag ban, and we launched in Biltmore Village with 30 stores who pledged that phased out plastic bags, and they have a decal on the window of their store to acknowledge the ban. And we've also started with West Asheville and downtown businesses, but that was pre-COVID. So we're gonna ramp it up again after COVID. We're also working with certified green restaurants. There are 12 in Asheville, and the Asheville Independent Restaurant Association, to try to get them to use compostable takeout containers rather than plastic. So that's a work in progress. The Plastic Reduction Task Force has sponsored Mind Your Plastic May, which is every May. There's events and blog posts, which you can see on the Mind Your Plastic May website under Asheville Greenworks. And we just finished up Plastic Free July, which is a global event. And we want to thank Judy for inviting us to celebrate that month. So we'll be doing that every year. We're also working with local area grocery stores, doing some customer outreach and reaching out to the managers to try to reduce plastic bag use in grocery stores. We'd also like them to do a voluntary ban. And we're collaborating with farmers markets to reduce plastic use at the farmers markets. Asheville Greenworks has designed a very nice cloth bag, which you can see in the photo, to give away at education outreach events. And if you want to join the Plastic Reduction Task Force, please email education@ashevillegreenworks.org. So what about compostable plastic? What is it, and is it a good thing? So it's bioplastic. It makes up less than 1% of the entire global plastic market. It's made of corn or plant-based plastic. In the US, it has to be made up of 7% or more plant matter. In Australia, it's 50%. So this is not recyclable. Do not put this in the recycling bin. It is compostable at an industrial scale. So it has to be shredded and in very hot compost. So the bioplastics industry is growing pretty rapidly, but we have to ask ourselves, is using corn for a single use, one-time plastic use the best use of a food resource? All right, thinking bigger, policy solutions. So in Asheville, we currently are pursuing a voluntary bag ban in stores, but maybe we could push for a plastic bag ban in the whole state of North Carolina. That would be one possibility. At least 8 states in the US and 349 cities have banned plastic bags already. So there's lots of precedent. We could also push for more zero waste stores where you bring your own containers and then you don't have these single-use plastics. We could target industry change, kind of like Finn was saying, with our product design. So if we design things to not be single use, to be multiple use, then we don't have all this plastic waste. And if you're interested in this topic, I recommend you read the book Cradle to Cradle by McDonough and Braungart. It's very good, and it's a lot about life cycle analysis and using materials for a long time and designing products in a better way. And finally, there's a proposed law called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which would put the disposal of plastic responsibility on the industry, not on the consumer. So in Europe, this already happens, and it's called extended producer responsibility. So the producer of the good is responsible for the whole life of the good. So that would be shifting the responsibility to the industry. What's happening globally? So in the last few years, you've probably heard that China no longer wants our recyclables or our waste, and they now are no longer taking it, which puts it back here in the US. We either have to landfill it or develop more recycling facilities in the US. Or try, as Finn said, try to deal with producing less waste to begin with. The European Union has a single-use plastic ban that goes into effect next year. It's very exciting, and I believe that Judy is going to post a report about it on the Sierra Club website if you want to read more. They're banning many types of single-use plastic, including silverware and sort of picnic goods, but lots of other things as well, plastic bags and balloon holders. So if you look at the balloon picture, there's kind of like a straw or stick. It's made of plastic and it's disposable, but not recyclable. So those are going to be banned. And you can see the graph shows items found on EU beaches. 49% of the items found are single-use plastics. And 55 countries have already banned plastic bags. So we have lots of additional resources. Many are posted on the Sierra Club website. There are the blog posts from Mind Your Plastic May. So I encourage you to look. You can find it through Greenworks website. And then there's lots of EPA data on plastics. And now we're going to have a panel discussion with all of our panelists. So we want to thank you for your interest. If you want to join the task force, you can email education@ashevillegreenworks.org. If you live in the Asheville or Buncombe County area, you can visit Kirby, but you also should just find your local recycling services provider and ask them if you have a question, don't put it in the recycling. Don't be a wishful recycler. When in doubt, throw it out or ask the questions first. So I want to thank all the panelists, and now we are going to open up. Judy is going to moderate our question and answer session so we can have a discussion about all these topics.
All right, thank you, Allison. And your first question is, are other countries better about recycling, and why don't we recycle more?
I'll be happy to answer that. Yes, some countries are better about recycling. We can look to Japan. Japan is very diligent. And I think there are a number of factors. One is political will. So you can have a carrot or a stick approach, right? So a stick approach would be that you're fined. And people in Japan are fined if they misrecycle or send recyclable things to the landfill. Also, they have much less land area. I think part of our problem in the US is we have so much land, we're just not worried about it. And it's cheap. But as we run out of landfill space, as we already are, we're going to see things shifting. And what Finn mentioned about the tipping fee, that's the cost of taking one truck to the landfill and dumping it. Not the $10,000. It could be like $36 or $42. So right now our tipping fees in the US are very cheap. So it's cheap to dump stuff in the landfill. But other countries have higher tipping fees and maybe fines if you don't recycle right. And it's more of a culture, a recycling culture. So we could get better.
Question, what Krista's blog is called again, how someone can find it.
That's on the Going Plastic Free Facebook page. I believe it's also posted on Krista's personal YouTube, but if you follow Going Plastic Free, you'll see it. It's the most recent post.
Right, that's the video. And then the blog with recipes is on the Mind Your Plastic May blog. And that's a whole Mickey's blog's in there and a whole bunch more. Soap nuts for laundry and plastic-free craft ideas. So you just have to scroll down all those blog posts and you'll get lots of good stuff in there.
I had an extensive question comment phone call this morning from a viewer of the movie, The Story of Plastic. And he pointed out, just like you had suggested, of blaming the consumer to keep America beautiful, and that now the big oil, big plastics, they are coming together, as it was stated in the movie, called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and they have promised $1.5 billion. And a lot of teams out on the beach with a lot of PR to clean up. But what they don't tell you is they now have $204 billion versus their one for cleanup, 204 to build 334 brand new plastic plants throughout the entire world. So just an incredible swamping of the world of plastic. And what can we do about it? And of course, you've already mentioned the Senator Tom Udall bill in Utah for nation is to break free from plastic. Do any of you have any ideas as to how this bill is doing or what the prognosis?
I don't have any updates on that, but I'm sure it would help if we called our local representatives. And as Judy was saying, the industry is very, very, very involved in this. So there have been bans in certain states. So there's a ban on a plastic bag ban. So certain states won't allow a ban to pass. And that's all the plastics and oil industry lobby. So So we all need to be vigilant. Don't be fooled if the title of the organization sounds great and sort of eco. It could be some greenwashing going on. So just talk to your representatives, try to push the support for this new law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would also,
Go ahead.
I would just also add to that, I was made aware that Coca-Cola had been a primary lobbyist against implementing bottle bills, which are bans against single-use plastic bottles in North Carolina. However, just this year, Coca-Cola made a promise to stop lobbying against bottle bills. So as long as they keep their promise, we have some more political power to implement a bottle bill in North Carolina. And you can, I believe it's bottlebill.org. If you literally Google bottle bill, you'll get a huge amount of information about what states have passed bottle bills and how helpful they can be for economies and for recycling.
And again, part of that earlier comment was that we actually provide subsidies to big oil and big plastic, and how to stop that, like in the stimulus bills, like through Congress. But of course, the immediate answer is vote, and let's get the election rolling, and let's get new people. Any other comments on that particular comment?
Well, I do just want to add as well that COVID-19 has really been an opportunity for big oil to push single-use plastics, especially plastic bags. And the oil industry specifically has reached out with a ban on single-use plastic bags right now. So they are pushing against the ban on single-use plastic bags, claiming that plastic bags are more hygienic. And I think it was actually Finn, didn't you write a blog that is in the Mind Your Plastic May that sort of debunks that myth that these single-use plastic grocery bags are actually more hygienic than bringing your own bags to grocery stores?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Mickey. And if you want to check out that blog or the blog that Mickey wrote about microplastics, they're all on the Mind Your Plastic May Asheville Greenworks website.
Great. Next question. Are pops in plastic eliminated during the recycling process, or are they persistent in the new product as well?
Wow, I saw that. That's a great question. I don't know. There is a whole UN treaty about persistent organic pollutants, actually, the POPs treaty. So it might be interesting to look at that. Does anybody else know if okay, I mean, they do persist. I don't know. I'm just gonna have to say I don't know on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great question though, but I'm not sure.
Can you talk about the crucial role of buying products with post-consumer waste content?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. Back to one of my very first slides, I talked about creating jobs and supporting American manufacturing, and that's one of the reasons that we recycle. So when you buy a material or a package or a product that's made out of post-consumer materials, that means it's already been recycled. So in buying that product, instead of a virgin plastic product, you are supporting the entire recycling process, as well as you know, everything that goes into that. So using less energy, using less landfill space, and supporting the entire manufacturing process. So that's definitely, if you're going to consume plastic products, post-consumer plastic products are a good way to go.
I'll chime in here too. Or do you want to say something, Judy?
No, go ahead.
I think we see this a lot with paper. So post-consumer content and recycled paper, and that is great. For plastics, the numbers do matter a little bit, and some of the numbers are more recyclable than others. And as Finn mentioned, as plastics get recycled, they sort of break down in their integrity. So we should always look at the materials of things we're buying and try to support the recycling process and buying post-consumer recycled items that contain the content. But the fact is that plastics are not infinitely recyclable, unlike glass or even aluminum. So it does kind of degrade with time and by the number also. So it's a little bit complicated.
Going back to the question about clamshells, you've already mentioned that they're heat um, could we cut it apart, the top and the bottom, and would that make it recyclable?
So unfortunately with Kirby Recycling, so Buncombe County and Fletcher and Asheville and surrounding areas, no, they can't accept that shape of plastic. But what Allison was saying about the numbers mattering was true, and it is true. If you look at the recycling infrastructure that, say, San Francisco has in place, as opposed to a single stream recycling bin, they have sorted recycling. And that's where those numbers would come in handy for the consumer. So you would look at the bottom of a clamshell and would most likely see, I believe that those are normally made of number 1 PET plastic and then sometimes made of number 2 HDPE plastic. Both of those are, they have low degradation value, so they can be recycled easily. But yeah, so short and simple answer is no, it doesn't matter how you prepare that plastic. And in fact, I'd say if you went through the effort of shredding up your clamshell, you'd actually just make it harder for the people at the Kirby processing plant to deal with.
Okay. Does Waste Pro actually take their recycling on to Kirby?
You know, as far as I know, the answer to that is yes, because as far as I understand, Kirby is the only recycling processing facility in Buncombe County. But I am not 100% sure of that, so I don't want to overstep the city of Asheville in any way there. So.
This person actually called up UPS and FedEx and asked about recycling styrofoam packaging peanuts. And they said, no way, they no longer accept them. Other comments, I think you said that clean food grade styrofoam is accepted at Publix. Could you comment on styrofoam again?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I did go ahead before this presentation and call up every organization that I was going to mention. So the FedEx and UPS in Asheville told me that you can recycle packing peanuts. They did say that it is individual storefronts. So it's not FedEx as a whole, but you have to go to specific locations. So perhaps the person that ran into some trouble with that packing peanut could call a different location. And I'm sorry for the confusion there. And then yes, Publix is accepting food grade recycling. Theirs is super simple. So with FedEx or UPS, you absolutely have to call ahead to the location. You have to get agreement from the manager, and you're going to have to bring that in person. So with COVID, there is a chance that individual locations aren't going to be recycling peanuts. But Publix still has their food grade recycling bins out front. So that's super easy. Just clean your food grade recycling, and that's like egg cartons and meat trays and everything like that. Stack them up and put them into the bin outside of Publix that's labeled styrofoam.
And carryouts with the styrofoam, if you wash those out, would those go to Publix as well?
Yes.
Yes, great.
So the types of plastics that can't go to Publix would be the block styrofoam that, you know, TVs are packaged in, or packing peanuts. Those don't count.
And it looks like Andrew from the herbiary downtown has just put in the chat that he will take the peanuts, the packing peanuts. So you can drop them off at herbiary. So nice. Thanks.
Would you say that again clearly? Where is
It's in the question and answer. So everybody can see it in the question and answer. Andrew Selwyn from 29 North Market Street, herbiary, the awesome store downtown. He'll take packing peanuts.
Great. Is it okay to recycle paper boxes with paint and markers on them? And is it okay to recycle wet paper?
Sorry. Yeah, so that's a little bit of a complicated question. So Kirby accepts any type of paper you can friggin' think of, except for shredded paper. So that's all of your junk mail and your magazine paper and newspaper and everything like that. However, if your paper is wet, What happens in the recycling process is, paper is moving along a conveyor belt, and then an airstream is injected onto the conveyor belt. So the paper whooshes up off of the conveyor belt. And if it's been soaked and is formed into a little pulp ball, it's not going to fly up with the rest of the paper, and it's probably going to end up falling down with the glass or getting stuck up with the plastic or something. So that's why they say it's best not to recycle. It is important not to recycle wet paper. But say, for example, I have my piece of paper here and I spilled a little bit of tea on it, but it's still a piece of paper. I can recycle that.
Okay, just to be clear, almond milk containers are recyclable, but not their caps, right? And also single-use water bottles are recyclable, but not their caps, right?
Yes, yes, and yes. You can recycle any milk juice cartons or boxes, but not their caps or their straws if those are attached. And you can recycle any plastic water bottle, but not its cap.
And likewise, laundry soap and dish soap and anything you buy from the grocery store that is in a bottle jug kind of thing.
Yes, so the exception to that would be something like, and you probably wouldn't get this at the grocery store anyway, but motor oils. The bottles that those come in are not recyclable, nor is any type of pesticide. So you might find some sort of like Roundup spray or something at a grocery store adjacent, like Lowe's or whatever, and those are not recyclable, but they can be brought to the transfer station every 2 weeks. The Buncombe County transfer station holds like hard to recycle. You can bring your electronics, you can bring light bulbs, you can bring paint cans, and you can bring bottles that have held those difficult chemicals like motor oil and pesticides. And yeah.
And where is the transfer station?
It is at 81 Panther Branch Road in Alexander, North Carolina. So you can just look up Buncombe County Transfer Station and it should come up.
Is that part of the landfill?
I'm not actually sure if it's directly adjacent to the landfill.
Yes, it is part of the landfill.
Thank you.
Okay. And what about corn-based container? I think you've already touched on this.
Yeah, those are the bioplastics I was talking about. So those are bioplastics, not oil-based plastics, and they have to be composted, or they ideally would be industrially composted. They are not recyclable. And Julia had a good question about, should we use those, like say for catering events? As long as they're going into compost, great. But I've been at so many events where people are like, my thing's compostable, and then they throw it in the recycling. All it's going to do is junk up the recycling thing. And it's not compostable unless you compost it. It's the whole life cycle thing. So if it goes into the landfill, it's just sitting there in the landfill along with the oil-based plastics, right? We haven't solved anything at that point. I hope this all makes sense. So we need to close the loop. If it's a bio-based plastic like corn, then it has to be industrial composted, which Danny's Dumpsters here in Asheville or Atlas Organics is another compost company. They can compost those bio-based plastics, but they're not recyclable. So they need to go to the right place.
Question about the newer number 4 and number 6 package HDPE can clips, often found with craft beer, which replaces the old style plastic 6-pack rings. They are not recyclable, but could be reused. Are there any local breweries that would take them back for reuse?
So I am actually in the process of investigating this. There is a company called PackTech. They're the ones that invented those can clips, those can handles. And they're based out of Oregon, and they have expanded their recycling of their product throughout Oregon, Washington, and California. We don't yet have one of their recycling facilities in North Carolina or the Southeast, but there is the potential that a company like Boojum or New Belgium, I'm not sure exactly who uses those handle clips, could take those handles back. And that's I would always encourage people, if you have a question about the direct recyclability of a product, say I went to New Belgium and I picked up some of those plastic handled 6-packs, call New Belgium and ask if they will take them back. And if they say no, ask why not.
Okay. Will anyone talk about Asheville's Waste Wizard? Okay, I think we'll pass on that one. Are you familiar with nebulizer tubes? They are tiny, non-recyclable plastics. Is there an alternative?
Do we have any idea what nebulizer tubes are used for?
I do not. Maybe someone could put that back in the Q&A. In the meantime, if you bring your plastic bags to places like Ingalls, what do they do with them? I've been told, maybe not from a reliable source, that many of these are simply sent to the landfill.
So plastic bags are, like Allison was talking about, they have a high degradation value. So they are harder to recycle back into quality materials. However, they can be recycled back into plastic bags and plastic films. And then they can also be shredded and compounded together to make things like engineered lumber and furniture. So I'm sure some of you have seen decks or chairs made out of composite type of material. Those are normally shredded up plastic bags or other types of plastic material. So yes, they are recycled.
So the answer on the nebulizers is they're used for medical purposes, like with asthma, for inhalers. Does that help at all?
I don't know specifically on that.
Sounds
Okay.
like a TerraCycle question.
All right.
Yeah, things like, someone's also asked me about vaping, the vaping things at one point. So any of those kind of unusual, maybe multi-plastic items, usually they're not recyclable, but TerraCycle does some really creative stuff. So check TerraCycle.
Are you all working with local grocery stores and consumers to reduce plastic bag use?
Yes, and the person who wrote that question, I really encourage you to join the Plastic Reduction Task Force, because we have a separate subcommittee just focused on grocery stores, and they've been very thorough, and it's been a hard path so far. So we've reached out to all the managers, and we have a Google spreadsheet with how they react to certain questions. Are they willing to maybe give a discount for bringing your own bag, for example? And then we're going to do some more consumer information about bringing your own bag. With COVID, we've kind of put that on hold for a moment, but we are doing sort of just sort of awareness outreach to all the different grocery stores in our greater area. So please join us.
There is a follow-up question about the single-use plastic bags that we take back to the grocery stores or to Lowe's. Do we know if they are actually being recycled?
Well, I think that skepticism is very healthy. But, you know, as far as we're told, yes, they are, and we know what they're recycled into. If that's, you know, something, it sounds like this person might be a real watchdog. And if they are, they should be on the Plastic Reduction Task Force, because those types of questions take tenacity and research to truly get answered. And if you want to follow the waste stream from the container at Harris Teeter all the way to the recycling reprocessor, that'd be awesome. But, you know, we've got to some degree, trust that when a corporation says that they're recycling, that they are recycling.
Again, a question on the blue plastic bags. If we do not have a separate Kirby bin, how do we put our recyclables together? If we live in an apartment, do we put them in a paper bag? Do we use the blue plastic bag to contain all our stuff?
No, don't use a blue plastic bag ever. Kirby is super adamant about no plastic bags. And in fact, sometimes you'll drive around Asheville and you'll see that the recycling services that Kirby drivers have taken all the recyclables out of the blue plastic bag and left it. So what you should do instead is store your recyclables in a paper bag. That's a great suggestion. Kirby on their website suggests that you put, if your recycling bin has overflowed, you should put all of your recyclables into a cardboard box. At this particular, it's an apartment complex. So if you're continuously running into problems where you don't have enough space for your apartment complex's recycling, you should talk to your apartment complex about that and say it is an issue and they need to get more recycling bins at your apartment complex.
Again, this is a plug for having people join the Plastic Reduction Task Force. There is a link on the Facebook page at Going Plastic Free Asheville. So all you people listening, please sign up. You are needed. Does North Carolina have a state law which prohibits local governments from banning plastic bags?
That's a good question, and it's a complicated one. The answer is unclear. Again, I encourage you to join the Plastic Reduction Task Force. Durham has tried to implement this ban, and they have a lawyer who is working with the state on this issue. So maybe that's why we're going with a voluntary bag ban right now, but someone's got to try it, and then we'll see if it holds up in court. So to be determined.
Okay. I take my recycling to Hominy Creek facility. Could it be that items taken there are recycled outside of Buncombe, and then I can include takeout containers and other hard to recycle items because they're going outside the county?
That's a great question. So no, the Hominy Creek transfer station accepts the same materials as Kirby unless otherwise mentioned. But it is also true that all of our recycling leaves Asheville. It all leaves Buncombe County. So Kirby only sorts the recycling. They then ship the various sorted types of plastic, metal, and glass all over the Southeast and in fact all over the country. So when it comes to recycling at Hominy Creek directly, get on I believe that's a Buncombe County facility, and you can go onto Buncombe County's website and look at exactly what they accept, and it is exactly the same list as what Kirby accepts.
We just had a comment about the North Carolina General Assembly overturning a local ban on bag ban. And so the point being that the North Carolina State Legislature can wipe out anything a municipality does.
Yes, and that's why Durham is going to court. So we're waiting for them to make the precedent, but we're going to go with the voluntary. So we're trying the carrot approach here in Asheville, just trying to thank businesses that are willing to do a voluntary bag ban on their own goodwill.
Great. Comment that local potters can use styrofoam peanuts for their shipping. So you might connect with local potters. I've heard that we aren't supposed to crush cans or cartons because of the shape sorting. Is that true?
So multifaceted question. So cans, aluminum, tin, and steel cans are all influenced by magnets. And so when it comes to Kirby recycling, they're put into, it's actually a fascinating machine. So there'll be magnets with different polarization. If you've ever tried to push two ends of a magnet together and it's on the wrong side, you'll notice that they won't touch each other. And so Kirby uses this machine that has these magnets that are facing the wrong direction at each other. And the cans fall into this machine and they're actually like shot through into a separate chute by this machine. So it doesn't actually matter what shape they are. You can crush them a little bit, with one specific caveat: they cannot be perfectly flat. So you can't run over them or roller pin them out or anything like that, because then they will get shot up with the paper. So they have to make it past the paper stage, and then they'll be sorted out correctly. And then as it relates to cartons, I'm not actually 100% sure on that. So,
How about the cellophane address windows on envelopes? Does that mess things up?
So I asked about this on a Kirby recycling tour, and because of it's a little complicated. The cellophane windows definitely do degrade the overall quality of the paper. However, if you think about a magazine, for example, or so much of like the junk mail that we all get, those shiny pieces of paper are coated in plastic, and they're all recyclable. So there's that minuscule amount of cellophane in the paper that you can recycle it as a whole. It does contribute to the degradation of the paper, but Kirby accepts it in totality.
Should we take the rings off of bottles as well as their caps?
So the reason that Kirby doesn't want bottle caps is because they get separated from the bottle, and then they end up all over the facility floor. They end up getting tossed in with the glass. They end up clogging up the machines. So those rings stand or pose much less of a threat of actually being separated from the bottle. They are made of a different type of plastic. So they have to be processed separately, but I would say no. I would say leave the rings on the bottles. But
Okay.
I'm not 100. I haven't asked Kirby directly about that.
You advocate bamboo toothbrushes. Somebody wrote in that they actually tend to mildew. What about preserve number 5 recyclable toothbrushes? This promotes their recycling business and is supposedly 100% post-consumer plastics. Any thought about this?
I'm not aware of that company, but yeah, you just want to look at it, look at the full life cycle of the product. So we have to think about all the sort of the carbon footprint of all of our products. Where is it made? Where is it shipped? How is it disposed? So if it's, made locally or in the US, and then the recyclables come from the US, that's great. And if it truly is 100% post-consumer, that's also great. So it sounds positive, but greenwashing is a real thing. So a lot of places want to make themselves sound better than they might be. So that's why it's always good to look with a critical eye and try to read all about it.
Is there any recycling effort in our public schools with endless milk cartons and small juice containers?
I'd actually like to very quickly address the bamboo toothbrush question. As with all things, you should maintain your products so that they last longer. And you can prevent your bamboo toothbrushes from mildewing by making sure that they don't stay wet. So make sure to shake them off and set them in a place where they're not in a puddle. And then also by gently coating them in mineral oil every couple of weeks. And you can I do that. And first of all, your bamboo toothbrushes will never look better, and they'll last a lot longer. And then, sorry, could you repeat the next question?
Recycling in the schools. What are we doing about all those juice and milk containers? Finn.
So I am not actually an expert on this. I don't actually know the answer. I know at UNCA, where I graduated from, we, the Student Environmental Center and the Office of Sustainability, Allison knows well, had put forth monumental effort to create various recycling programs, including All in the Hall and recycling programs that made sure that people knew how to sort their waste. But I don't know. I don't know for elementary schools or middle schools. That's a great question.
Any suggestions on how to encourage producers to stop using plastics? Gerber used to use cardboard and now they've switched to plastic. Any way we can encourage them to switch back?
My really quick, simple answer to this is boycott those products and buy products that use post-consumer plastic or that are just actually biodegradable.
Do we recycle the plastic holder of a 6-pack of beer?
No, not in your curbside recycling bin. However, like we talked about earlier, you might be able to contact like a craft beer brewery and they might take back products like that. But otherwise, you should cut them up so there's no intact rings and throw them away.
May I ask why the slowdown with single plastic use when it comes to banning it from communities?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that question, but maybe it had to do with my comment about COVID. Because of COVID, there was a perception that reusable shopping bags weren't as clean as like new disposable plastic ones, but that has been debunked. It's perfectly fine to still take your reusable shopping bags to the grocery store. And also with takeout containers, now with a lot of places not having dine-in and there's much more takeout, then we're seeing a little bit of an upswing in plastic use. So that's disappointing. So basically just be hygienic like you always are, but you can still reuse items and just wash them. So we're seeing a little bit of pushback right now, and we're seeing a push for plastics kind of in the name of sanitation or cleanliness, but we can still reuse and be clean and safe.
Quartz paper containers for soup have a small plastic pour spout. Is it helpful to tear this out before recycling the box itself?
No, so all of those materials like the juice cartons, milk cartons, or like the plastic soup cartons are actually made of tons of layers of plastic laminate, normally number 2 LDPE, and paper, dyes, plastic, wax, paper, all sorts of these layered materials. So they are actually incredibly difficult to recycle. If you can get your stuff in a can, that's a better option. But speaking about extended producer responsibility, there's been no laws passed whatsoever, but the producers of these products want so badly for their products to be viable that they have started paying recycling companies like Kirby to take their products back. So traditionally, these wouldn't actually be recyclable, but the people that make them have made it so. So they're already going to have to spend so much. They already have the machinery and the resources to extract all of those different materials. So I would not worry about pulling apart those specific materials.
What actually happens to the recyclables from Asheville? Where do they go? Is there a market?
Yes. So all of our recyclables go to different locations, and that just depends on the market. I know that we had a purchaser in Greenville, but it changes frequently, and I am not a employee of Kirby, so I can't speak directly to their supply line.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I will say that this is interesting, and it relates to the question about why are other countries doing better. So again, we need to think about the carbon footprint of all these activities. And we had glass recyclers that were closer to Asheville, but some of those have closed down. So we need recycling facilities close to us so that our loop is smaller. So, and you might have noticed that there's an aluminum shortage due to COVID because of demand for more things in cans. It's not that there's a global aluminum shortage, it's just that we don't have the producing facilities for aluminum up at capacity at this moment. So yeah, Finn's right. We send different materials to different places. Some of them are in Tennessee, some of them are in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina. But it would be nice if we had more recycling production, like places that could process the materials closer.
So following up on that about other countries, are they more successful than we are in terms of recycling? Do they have better markets or better something? I don't
They
know.
have, remember Mickey said, or Mickey and I both said only 9% of our plastics are recycled. Yes, if we look at a place like Korea or Japan, Singapore, probably most of Scandinavia, the recycling rates are going to be a lot higher, and they're going to have more closed loop systems. And like Finn mentioned about the bottle deposits, right? Most of Europe has bottle deposits, and actually lots of Latin America too. So they're closing the loop, and it's not single use, it's multiple use items. So if we had a bottle deposit in every state, we would see things getting reused more, not just thrown away to the landfill. So we do have a lot of room for improvement.
Just to put that 9% of recyclables in the US into perspective, Germany recycles 56% of their plastics.
So again, you were talking about the closed loop. So they actually have markets, and explain the closed loop again.
Right. So I don't know this for a fact, but if it was truly closed in Germany, they would be producing plastic, recycling plastic, and remanufacturing other items from that plastic, and would all be kind of close by. And that's the extended producer responsibility, that then producers would want the raw materials or the repurposed materials from the recycling process. So we just haven't really looked at all the stages of a product. And we're so used to throwing things in a landfill that we're just like, whatever, it's quick and it's over. And it does relate to cost benefit analysis. Right now, it's still kind of cheaper, artificially cheaper, because we're not paying the true cost of goods. Also because we have an oil subsidy here in the US, right? Europe, it's more expensive to get fuel in Europe than it is here in the US because of our subsidies. So that's skewing the plastic market and making plastic cheaper too.
All right, one last pitch. Please join the Plastic Reduction Task Force. Please go to the Facebook page at Going Plastic Free Asheville. Click on the link and come to some meetings. I want to invite everyone again to come next month to hear William Barber III on environmental injustices, race, class, and climate change. And I want to encourage everyone to apply for absentee ballots and to volunteer to help us with the election. But I want to thank graciously Allison and Mickey and Finn and Krista. Thank you for all your preparation and your great presentation. So thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you
Thanks,
also.
Judy. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody.